Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. Today our story takes us to the city of Baltimore, a metropolis nestled comfortably in north-central Maryland, close to where the Patapsco River empties into the Chesapeake Bay. When wanderlust invites the fortunate to enter through Baltimore's gates, such travelers will likely find themselves roaming the streets around the charmed city's inner harbor, where one's gaze can run off seemingly unto eternity on the river beyond the edge of the city's skyline, the lights beaming from which coruscate as stars amidst a concrete void. Yes, Baltimore is a shining city upon a hill to the visitor from far-off lands. I'm not actually sure if it's on a hill, but that cliche really sounded like it would work well there. However, what those who live upon its streets know, Baltimoreans that is that there is pain for every pleasure the outsider is offered, as there is nightfall to every day. The Baltimore no one sees is awash in poverty and crime, and little opportunity or chance is afforded a great many great people there, as they are left to fend for themselves against personal tyrants, unaided as the currents of the Patapsco wash away their tears. And unfortunately, hundreds of years into the future, Baltimore was little different. The unregistered were left to fend for themselves amongst slums, trapped in a vast criminal underworld, living under the reign of violent gangs and a corrupt police force populated by robots who knew little of the soul of man. It was on these depraved streets that the boy we've come to know and love as Amos Burton was raised, not by parents, but by violence. This is not going to be an easy video, because where many characters in The Expanse are interesting, complicated beings, Amos is probably the most complex, the most real of them all. Spoiler alert, my friends, because today we are going to tell his story. But despite what many people claim, this is not the story of a vicious sociopath. Rather, it's the story of a hero. When we first came to know Amos, he was working as a mechanic aboard the Canterbury, an ice hauler in the employ of Pure and Clean Water Company. He was part of the crew that left the Cant aboard the ship Shuttle the Night to investigate the scopuli, which had put out a distress call. For a while, he really didn't seem like he did much thinking at all. He mostly grunted, did his job, and if he did utter words, it was to make some sort of humorous, cynical comment.
Well, I say we fly to the nearest Mars base and turn ourselves in.
That's an excellent idea. We'll just roll up in a stolen Mickey Corvette with a dead Martian in the trunk.
The only thing that really seemed to bother him was everyone not named Naomi Nagata. I couldn't find the comment, but one of our viewers described Amos as the Chewbacca of The Expanse. The two indeed have some similar personality traits, and depending on who you ask, some might say Amos is just as delicious looking as Chewbacca as well, though in different ways. In the beginning, Amos seemed to only have one purpose: do what ship engineer Naomi wanted him to do. He didn't trust Holden or anyone else, only Naomi, and whatever would make her happy is what he did.
You don't think we're gonna make it? What are you doing up here?
Naomi told me to, so I am.
Chewbacca relies on Han Solo because he's an animal. He doesn't have the mental faculties to quite analyze the world around him to the level of humans. And on the surface, Amos relied on Naomi because he didn't trust himself to make his own decisions.
I've been trying to make choices on my own lately, and I can't seem to make the right ones.
This harkens back to his early life in Baltimore, when he would often make poor choices. He once killed someone that a gangster he was working for had only sent him to collect money from, an action that led to a reprimand from his boss, an unscrupulous man himself. But despite his loyalty to Naomi, Amos isn't quite all Chewbacca though. He constantly displays the capability to analyze situations and make his own decisions about how to proceed in specific situations. Amos often favors practical solutions over moral ones.
Naomi, what are you doing? We need to be strapped in now.
I'm gonna try talking to those people.
I can't let you do that.
Amos believes in executing strategies that get the job done and keep him and his fellow crew members safe. If that means leaving innocent people behind, fine. This isn't because Amos is emotionless, it's because he's used to death. To him, the untimely death of innocent people is but a fact of reality. Not only is Amos smart enough to make his own decisions, but he's also a hell of a mechanic. He's often found himself making repairs to the Rocinante while in high-G maneuvers. That said, while smart, at times Amos was legitimately mean, violent, and overall rather threatening to everyone around him.
Oh, this ain't good at all.
You know, for a badass Mickey Navy boy, you're a pretty whiny little bitch.
Whoa, hey, Amos, don't be rude to Alex. Don't call him names. I was kidding. That's just a joke. Alex, you're a bitch. Anyway, yes, Amos is a violent person. On Arrows, he killed Sematimba with little hesitation, and he probably didn't need to do so. I mean, Amos had to make a decision and Sematimba was threatening them, but you'd think that somebody else would probably try to avoid killing in that situation. Later, when Mercury was already in custody on the Rossi, Amos sought him out and beat the crap out of him. You could see in his eyes the thirst for blood that is part of who he is. I mean, his favorite pastime is spacing people for sport. Amos has no problem hurting people if he needs to get the job done. However, that he kills is, to me, not a reflection of some sort of acute pathology. It's just how he learned to survive as he grew up. Killing is a rather simple chore for him because he's seen so much death. Amos isn't motivated by a need to kill either. He really only hurts others in the course of completing a job. Rather, it's other things that make Amos tick. For instance, there's his personal agency. Amos will do whatever he has to do to maintain his freedom. In a world that in his eyes is full of people looking to harm him and others, his ability to control the world around him is vital to him keeping his sanity.
And as far as they're concerned, we're the ones who blew up the Donager. And I am not spending the rest of my days in a Martian gulag.
Amos prefers death to a loss of his freedom because when he's in a cage, it's much harder for him to protect himself from those who want to hurt him. When Amos was handcuffed to a bed by the RCE on Illis, he lashed out in rage, as his freedom, something that he had to fight for his whole childhood as an unregistered being in Baltimore, was taken away from him against his will. I'm not sure Amos even understands just how much he's scared of losing his freedom. He lives this lie that he has no fear.
I haven't felt fear since I was 5 years old.
Amos might be brave, but he does get scared. He seemed fairly worried about being hit by an OPA missile after a threatening message from a deepfake James Holden was sent out to the ships in a flotilla heading out towards the ring. And he was completely terrified about losing his vision on Illis.
It's okay if you're scared.
I don't know what I am.
Here was this man who trusted so few people, who always kept a watchful eye, and now he couldn't see the threats coming.
People like us deserve a say in how we go out.
That's all I ever wanted.
Amos isn't afraid of death, but sometimes he is afraid, and here he had lost control of his world, a world he doesn't trust. Back on the streets of Baltimore, Amos had no one he could really trust either. He was abused, and the helpless around him, including those he loved, such as his mother and eventual caretaker Lydia, were abused as well. This is why, while in a bar on Tycho, Amos warned a guy who hit on him about a potential attacker.
That bucker, ogling you, he's packing a knife on his left hip.
He grew up in places like that bar. Worse places, pleasure dens where sex workers were abused and trafficked with no repercussions. Amos discussed this with Prax at one point when explaining why he beat the stuffing out of Roma on Ganymede.
He's a bully. And where I come from, bullies take desperate young girls like your daughter and force them into prostitution.
What you have to understand about Amos is that despite his attempts to act like he's unaffected, he sees his childhood in the rest of the world. He's constantly punishing the bad guys who did bad to him and the people he loved. I mean, not the actual people, but the same kind of people. For as numb as Amos wants to appear to be, he's constantly at war with his demons. When documentary filmmaker and journalist Monica Stewart presses Amos about his name and background story not checking out, he loses his cool. After all, he did kill his gangster boss and steal his name in order to escape Baltimore. However, that's not why he lost it here. He was upset because someone who knows nothing about the world and pain he comes from was attempting to exploit his past for the sake of her own personal gain. What can anyone know of being born in the slums to an abused mother, immersed in the world of prostitution? Most likely himself prostituted as a boy and raised in violence and bloodshed as he watched those he cared about around him die. Amos knows nothing but abuse. He knows nothing but people doing terrible things to him. See, Amos's loyalty to Naomi wasn't the product of some primitive instinct, like a dog obeying its owner. It was the product of insight, of a conscious decision to subjugate himself to her as a reward for her loyalty and goodness to him. He's a willful Chewbacca. Amos didn't only commit himself to Naomi because he needed her guidance in decision-making. Rather, even though he was smart enough to think for himself, talented enough to be a success had he been born into more fortunate circumstances, he didn't want to think. He didn't want to succeed. He didn't care about his life or destiny. He just wanted to dedicate himself to someone who was actually willing to treat him with decency. This is why it hurt Amos so bad every time Naomi broke his trust. She didn't tell him that Holden logged a distress call from the Canterbury.
Why didn't you tell me?
I don't know.
She forcefully sedated him on the weeping somnambulist on Ganymede so he wouldn't stop her from going outside taking away his freedom. And she lied about destroying the Rossi's protomolecule sample.
I gave the protomolecule to Fred Johnson.
She apologized for these things, and Amos eventually accepted her apologies, but I'm not sure he could ever trust her the same way again.
About what I did to you on Ganymede. I'm sorry.
Not after the hurt that he has been through. You'll notice that throughout the show, Amos drifts closer and closer to Holden. He becomes Holden's willful Chewbacca.
Will you shut him up, please?
No, look, you need to...
Why? Well, not only does Naomi betray his trust, but Holden gains it. Naomi is good to Amos, but she has wavering loyalties between the Rossi crew and the Belt. But Holden is dedicated to his crew. When Holden came to rescue Amos and the others from the Donagers' holding cell, something changed in Amos. A seed had been planted. As soon as they were back on the ship after that event, Amos started to warm to Holden, even convincing Naomi to go to Tycho Station on behalf of Holden.
Tell Fred Johnson to clear us a berth. We're good to go.
You talked Naomi into it.
With our track record, we'll probably get Tycho blown to smithereens too.
And eventually there were even times that Amos took Holden's side over Naomi's, such as when he agreed with Holden that they should destroy their protomolecule sample when both Naomi and Alex wanted to give it to the Belt and Mars respectively.
We are this close to getting rid of it once and for all.
We should kill it, drive it into the goddamn sun.
And from that point forward, Holden never gave up on Amos. That's his boy. They watch out for each other. When Amos was losing his vision and going crazy, it was Holden who found him and brought him back to his senses.
Sorry.
But that's not the only reason that Amos learned to trust Holden. As with Naomi, he also appreciated the goodness in Holden.
I mean, you were always trying to be a good man. Not everybody does, thank you.
And you might ask, what kind of sociopathic killer values the good in people? And that's exactly the right point to make, but we'll come back to that later. Back on point, Amos does not trust easily, and when he does, breaking that trust is devastating because of the constant evils he's experienced in his life. He doesn't trust people or his surroundings, a trait that might prevent him from developing personal relationships at times, but serves him well on the battlefield, as we saw in the hotel on Eros when he noticed danger coming before anyone else and acted in time to prevent disaster. Amos is more than proficient in combat, but not because years upon years of military training. Rather, the streets are what taught Amos to defend himself. That he lived to escape Baltimore is a reflection of survival of the fittest. If he couldn't fight, he wouldn't have made it. Of course, his resilience and mental aptitude helped him make it this far as well. He's no idiot, quite the opposite actually. Let's talk about his mind and thinking process. When Holden proposes that the crew renames their ship from Tachi to Rocinante, Amos responds,
Rocinante. Huh? It's Spanish for
Workhorse. I like it. I know a lady named Rocinante. She was good to me.
Yes, it's important to note here how much Amos appreciates it when someone simply treats him as a human being rather than a monster. But what I want to focus on here is that he knew what the name Rocinante meant. He has a good memory, which means he remembers all the bad that's happened to him, probably in detail. And no matter how deep he ventures into the void, he'll never forget those horrors. In the vacuum of space, one can escape a lot of things, but not pain. You can't run from pain. But I digress. Amos's mind is both his greatest friend and greatest enemy. At first introduction, he's Chewbacca, but once you get to know him, he's so much more. On Tycho, when Amos went to inform Detective Miller that he was no longer wanted on the Rocinante after the latter killed protogen scientist Anthony Dresden, Amos revealed his self-awareness.
You and me, we're a lot alike. We've been around. But the captain, well, he's as close to righteous as it gets out here.
It's weird. It's almost as if Amos knows the person he's supposed to be, and so that's who he decides he is, whether this needs to be so or not. Here, he paints himself as this lost cause when it comes to righteousness. He makes similar weird, insightful comments throughout the show, in which he maps out people's roles in the game of life, including his own.
The others don't get it yet, but I know what you are.
Oh? And what is that?
A killer.
Again, Amos is almost narrating the story here, explaining who people in the story are as if it makes it true. He sees himself as Murtry's equal, but he isn't. At one point, Alex angrily confronted Amos for beating up a man who was attacking him at a bar on Tycho. Alex wanted to be left to protect himself. Amos says this.
The way I see it, there's only three kinds of people in this world. Bad ones, ones you follow, and ones you need to protect.
But so I'm the one you need to protect, is that right?
Yeah, there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Again, here's Amos being insightful, almost overthinking, explaining people's set roles in the world. And think about it, Amos certainly isn't someone who needs to be protected, and he isn't someone who others follow. So he was implying that he's bad, and that's why he needed to be the one to get his hands dirty. Yes, Amos was born into misfortune, but to some extent he forces this destiny upon himself, that he should be this monster. I'm not saying that Amos wants to be a monster, he doesn't. He fears that. What I'm saying is that he believes he is one. Something that all of us are liable to feel when we're not offered compassion. Shortly after Eros crashed into Venus, back on Tycho Station, Amos had a hostile interaction with a child.
I said one each. Back off.
Leave my mother alone! You leave her alone!
This startled Amos, who saw in the boy himself, and in himself the bad men who used to hurt him. This led Amos to seek out captive protogen scientist Paulo Cortazar for consultation on how to stop feeling.
You want to be that real boy again, to feel how you felt before the world broke you, the safety of your mother's embrace.
It's true, Amos cannot be the innocent little boy again, free of his demons. Cortazar advised Amos that he doesn't want to feel those things anyway. He cauterized those feelings in order to survive.
You don't want that back again. Stomp out those last embers and you'll be free of it.
And so Amos tried to rid himself of his ability to empathize, as was done to Cortazar. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy in which Amos attempts to become the unfeeling monster he believes he should be, but doesn't want to be. Back on the Rossi, Alex came to confront Amos about refusing to help out with fixing hand terminals for refugees. Amos seemed emotionless, uncaring, and mean, frustrating Alex, and the two almost came to blows.
I don't want to fight you, Alex. Please don't make me. Because if we do, who's gonna fly the ship?
Amos seemed almost psychopathic here, but here's the thing. I don't really buy it, and no, he hadn't removed his empathy. He was trying to force himself to not feel, and yet tears were visible in his eyes. And listen, I usually don't like to break the fourth wall and talk about the actor's portrayal of the characters, but Wes Chatham, A1 job here. A1. Amos may not be able to turn back the hands of time. He might be somewhat angry and violent, but he's actually, despite his upbringing, a decent person. On Ganymede, during the research to find Prax's daughter and the people responsible for experimenting with the protomolecule on children, Prax asked Amos how many people he's killed.
Well, I'm not a homicidal maniac. Holden and Naomi, they're not like me. They're better. I'll watch your back, but they'll find your little girl.
Once again, it's like Amos is forcing these statements on conversations. All Prax asked him was how many people he's killed. What he got back was a statement from Amos about himself. That's what he perceives himself as, an uncaring person just there to get his hands dirty and get the job done. It's like, Amos, this is a Wendy's, sir. Place your order and pull up to the window. Instead, he doesn't pull up. He just keeps trying to prove he's terrible. This is a very hurt person. When they finally do track down Prax's daughter and apprehend Dr. Strickland, Amos once again makes sure everyone plays their role. He stops Prax from killing Strickland.
You're not that guy. You're not that guy.
The truth is that Amos did something nice here. He prevented a simple botanist from living with blood on his hands. To Amos, Prax is someone who needs to be protected by bad guys like him who are willing to take out other bad guys.
I am that guy.
Amos has a lot in common with Elijah Price, Samuel L. Jackson's character from Unbreakable, who decided that he was supposed to be the supervillain in the world. He had to be that guy so David Dunn could be the hero. Amos too knows the guy he has to be so that others can be the heroes. Here's the thing, there is at least some control we can take of our destinies, and that Amos has insight implies that he can steer himself away from always being that guy. The truth, whether Amos wants to believe it or not, is that at times, yes, despite his flaws and murders, he is, like James Holden, a noble hero. It's really a single moment in the beginning of The Expanse where Amos first reveals that he's more than meets the eye. When trapped aboard the Donager, he tells Naomi this.
I want to say thank you. You know, for helping me all those times you did.
And yeah, he had just got done trying to use Alex as a human shield, so I wasn't ready for that statement, but nonetheless, it was meaningful. What kind of emotionless psycho appreciates someone for being good to them? Or even further, thinks about what it means to be a good person? Actually, even before though, when medical technician Shed Garvey kind of lost his head in the Donager's holding cell, the first thing Amos did was look towards Naomi to make sure she was okay. What kind of monster does that? I'll tell you. a selfless person. Amos also has less selfish desires than most people. Amos repeatedly suggested destroying the Rossi's protomolecule sample.
The protomolecule. What are we gonna do with it?
Simple, we stick it on the end of a torpedo and we fire it into the sun.
Amos is always the one to save the day. When a bunch of rebel belters took over the Tycho control room, he shut off the air to the room, ending the attack. He's also brave and, as I said, selfless. He'll sacrifice his own well-being in order to save others. On Ganymede, he picked up a grenade without hesitation and threw it away, saving everyone.
Grenade!
And on Illis, he took it upon himself to comfort a newly orphaned Belter kid who was going blind.
Don't worry. I'll see for the both of us.
Best of all, he told Prax that he wasn't really going to be the one to help him get his daughter back, and yet without him, Prax never would have seen May again. He took a bullet for Prax, and he unplugged his air hose in high G, risking his own safety to help Prax fix his. As promised, he had Prax's back, but he also directly pushed for Prax to not give up on finding his daughter.
I don't know shit about parenting, but what I do know is that a kid needs at least one person who never gives up on them. No matter what.
You can see here how Prax's personal experiences didn't turn him into some unfeeling monster. Rather, they motivated him to be better. But his experiences also didn't turn him into a one-dimensional hero, and credit to the Expanse's writers for that. He's complicated. He's not completely good or completely evil, but he's more often a hero than a villain. And he has the capacity to be saved, and the kinder people are to him, the more he is willing to let go of the monster. When the crew of the Rossi rescued May, Prax told her to go with Amos.
This is Amos. He's my best friend in the whole world. He helped me find you.
Such a small thing. Just Prax calling Amos his best friend in passing meant so much to Amos, more than the simple statement meant to Prax.
You miss him?
He was good company. He was my best friend in the whole world.
Amos tended to Prax's plans in his absence. He missed Prax. Amos is a good man who resorts to the worst aspects of his personality in the absence of love. The crew of the Rocinante was Amos's first real family, and though he wouldn't say it, this is why the Rocinante meant more to him than probably anyone else. Alex cares about Mars, Naomi cares about the belt, Holden cares about coffee, but Amos really only cares about the Rocinante and his family aboard.
Are you back? Back to help, back to stay.
They're everything he has, everything that's giving him one more chance to not become the soulless monster that he believes he's destined to become. Life can make good men into terrible ones. The deterministic principles of the universe can lead angels astray as gravity pulls men down from the heavens. And yet, despite coming to maturity in the fires of the underworld, Amos is a pretty damn good guy. And if we're judging people based on where they start versus where they end up, he's done better than most of us. Anyways, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you think of Amos. I know he's a very popular character. I hope I fully encapsulated everything that makes up his being. Give the video a like if you did enjoy it and want more Expanse content. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.